There's an idea that shows up everywhere once you learn to see it. In marriages, in culture, in politics, on social media. It's the same argument structure whether it's two people fighting in a kitchen or millions of people yelling at each other online. Different faces, different stakes, different platforms, but it's the same fight. And the reason these arguments never end isn't emotion. It isn't anger. It isn't even bad intentions. It's the way the argument itself is built. You can swap the people, you can swap the topic, you can even swap the decade. The argument stays exactly the same. At some point in these arguments, something subtle happens. The discussion stops being about what actually happened and it quietly shifts into what you meant, what you really think, or what you are as a person. And the moment that happens, something really important breaks, because now you're not arguing facts. You're arguing someone else's interpretation of your mind. And once you're there, you're no longer debating reality. You're debating a story someone else wrote about you. Think about that. You're debating a story that someone else is writing about you. And here's the problem with that. You're now being accused of something that cannot be proven or disproven. You can't submit evidence for what you didn't intend, and you can't produce documentation for a thought you never had. And no amount of explanation can undo an accusation that exists entirely in someone else's head. If the claim can't be tested, it can't be resolved. And yet, we treat these accusations as if they're conclusive. Think about how it works in a courtroom. You cannot presume intent. Mental state has to be inferred from evidence, not declared as fact. Behavior is examined, actions are documented, patterns are weighed, and the accused is allowed to testify to their own intent. Socially, though, we ignore all of that. We presume motive, we declare intent, and we deny testimony. And then we wonder why nothing ever gets resolved. Here's where it turns into a trap. If you defend yourself, that's taken as proof. If you explain yourself, that's manipulation. And if you stay calm, then you're calculated. If you get emotional, you're exposed. Every move you make is interpreted as confirmation. The argument is no longer about truth, it's about containment. Now here's the part people don't want to hear. The person making the accusation might actually be right. You might even have been wrong, careless, even guilty, but truth and argument structure are not the same thing. A skilled debater can dismantle a bad argument in a heartbeat without even trying, even when they're guilty. And an innocent person can be destroyed by an argument that never required evidence in the first place. Pointing out a logical flaw doesn't prove innocence. It only proves the argument was flawed. Logic can protect the innocent, and logic can also, just the same, protect the guilty. Winning an argument is not the same as being correct, and losing one doesn't mean you're wrong. The real failure isn't manipulation. The real failure is using frameworks that can't produce truth. When intent replaces evidence, resolution becomes impossible. That's why these fights never end, because they weren't designed to. For that reason, that's why you find marriages that implode. That's why cultural conversations turn toxic. That's why entire groups talk past each other for decades. Everyone is arguing and no one is proving. If you want truth, argue behavior and evidence. If you want power, argue intent. Most people confuse the two. Now you know the structure. Now you know the trap. Now you know why defending yourself never worked and most likely never will. Now you know what to do when you're being gaslit. Own your own story, or somebody else will.